Ladies and gentlemen, happy holidays and welcome back to the Strawberry Hill Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Simmons, and we are here at the Shop Cigar Lounge. And if you are looking for something to get your cigar smoking loved one, we got gift boxes, we got cigars, we got gift cards. Make sure you come down and see us. But anyway, make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow us on all the social media platforms at Strawberry Hill Podcast. Today, we got Mr. Max Mendoza in the house, Mr. Heartland 180, Mr. Buddha himself. I don't know how many nicknames I can give you, by the way, but how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Getting settled back in. Finally, I just got back from taking my honeymoon. I've been married for 2 years, and we just now took our honeymoon.
I remember you telling me that you haven't taken a honeymoon, and this is it, huh?
Yes.
2 years in the making.
Yes.
So where'd you stay?
So we were in Puerto Vallarta. I have a very close friend of mine, man. I'd call him a brother, but he has a place down there, a nice little, like apartment building, hostel setup, and spent 2 weeks at his place and got to see
you down
Puerto
there for
Vallarta.
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Oh, you lucky son of a gun.
Oh, it was amazing.
Jeez. So you got this, you said Puerto Vallarta?
Yeah.
And then Belize?
Oh, well, we were at Belize before going to Puerto Vallarta, which was funny because Belize wasn't supposed to happen. It was totally an accident.
Is this the one that the trip you won or something?
Yeah. So, well, no, I was at a fundraiser, and I had won in an auction 2 international tickets. So the plan was to use the international tickets for our honeymoon. Well, I didn't look at the expiration date. So I go to book our flights to Mexico, and come to behold, they tell me, hey, these expire before you're planning on going. So we were going to go. We were planning to be down there November, what was it, like 25th, I think, is when we left. And the vouchers expired November 8th. So
wait, so you had to use the voucher, like you couldn't use it like get the tickets now and then fly.
No, they had to be used before the 8th.
Oh, that's messed up.
Yeah, so I panicked. Luckily, I was able to get like a Southwest credit card and get our flights for Mexico, and then without my wife knowing anything, booked this surprise trip to Belize so that I didn't waste these vouchers. And luckily, we have a friend of ours who lives in Belize part-time, and so I contacted her and said, hey, this is the situation. I need your help. Help me book this surprise trip to Belize. And it was so cool because my wife had no clue until that morning. I told her we were going out of town. She thought we were, doing something work related for me, like going to Wichita or something. And we start heading to the airport. We get to the airport and I hand her passport and was like, hey, we're going to Belize.
Oh, look at you.
Oh, yeah.
Look at you. Little Rico Suave.
Hey, man, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah. Yeah, so you just got back. I'm pretty sure you're not enjoying this weather.
No, I mean, it was, low 80s. I mean, I don't even think we even made it in the 70s while we were down there, and it was just beautiful. And, I have this injury from a motorcycle accident, so whenever the weather gets cold, people see me walking around with a cane and stuff, and here I am, December, sitting on a beach, swimming in the ocean. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was my first time ever swimming in the ocean.
Yeah. How did it feel?
Very salty.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very salty. But I feel like, because I was saying earlier, like every time I go to the beach, I make sure I get into the ocean. It kind of just like, I don't know, it's like very cleansing. Like it feel for me, like I get in and it's just like, I don't know. It's kind of like just washes away like all the bad juju. I feel like. Oh yeah. Just getting in the ocean, just relaxing. Yeah, there's a ton of salt. Yeah, but
well, and it's just it's kind of an amazing experience when you're sitting there and you're just looking out in the ocean and it doesn't stop. It just goes on and on.
Yeah,
and it kind of puts in perspective, like, wow. I think nowadays the world's gotten so small. Thanks to technology and communication, and so when you're sitting right there in it, and it just kind of brings it back into perspective, like how big the world is and how amazing it is. And for me, I most of my travel has been in my adult life with work, so I haven't really been able to do any traveling personally, just for pleasure. And to be able to go out of the country back to back like that, and just sitting there and seeing the mountains and seeing the ocean and things that, you know, I've only seen on TV or in books, and it was just very it was a nice reminder of like how all my hard work has gotten me to this moment to be able to, you know, to be able to enjoy life and to experience these things. Like, you know, some poor ex street punk
never thought years.
Exactly.
Yeah, you need to do that every year. You need to take a trip every single year.
Well,
I try to do that every year. Just get out of the state at least every year.
Yeah. Well, and you know, my board for my non-for-profit has really been on my butt for several years now, saying that, you know, I needed to take time. I needed to do this. You know, my work is my passion. So to me, it's not a job, you know, it's my passion. It's part of my life. And so I have a tendency to kind of become a workaholic. So, you know, taking that time to take care of myself, and you can't help others if you can't help yourself.
Yeah. So before we jump into Heartland 180, let's get into a little bit about you. So
yeah.
You originally from here?
Yeah. So you know, when people ask me where you're originally from, I just say Kansas City. I've lived both sides of the state line equally, Missouri, Kansas. So I'm from Kansas City. And so bounced around quite a bit as a kid, you know, kind of really took off on my own around 14. Bouncing from place to place, you know, the couch surfing and,
so why the couch surfing?
Well, I have an interesting background, you know. Both of my parents struggled. They had their own demons that they were fighting. Both of my parents struggled with addiction and
drugs, alcohol.
Drugs, all of the above.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the biggest things. Hurt people hurt people.
That's a good saying. I like that.
Oh yeah. And so, you know, it was a rough upbringing. But I'm grateful because I learned how to be a survivor, you know, and just like with a lot of the kids I work with, that's what they're doing. They're surviving. And I've always been of this thought of, I can either be the victim of my circumstances or I can be the victor of my circumstances. How do I take everything I go through in life and use it to make myself better than I was before? Yeah. So, you know, it was hard. And it was crazy because I even stayed in school. I stayed in high school, even though I ran away and was running the streets. I stayed in school up until my sophomore year, but I was dropping out my sophomore year. And
what do you mean by dropping out? Like you were just like, I'm out of school
I'm
now?
done.
Or
yeah, and it was crazy because I had an older cousin. He pretty much raised me. He looked out for me. I mean, he was more of, you know, my cousins were like my brothers, you know. And the last time we ever spoke, we got into an argument because I was hanging out with people he told me I shouldn't be hanging out with, and he was mad that I was dropping out of school because he truly believed, like, I mean, he told me, he was like, you're the only one in our family that's smart enough to make it, that can do something with yourself. And the last thing I ever told him was go F yourself. Those were the last things I ever said to him. And unfortunately, because of the people I was associated with, gangs and drugs, I found myself getting incarcerated at a very young age and going to prison at 17 years old. And, you know, and he was shot and killed while I was incarcerated.
Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, you know, yeah, it's unfortunate. But, you know, it's one of those things when you live that kind of life, you know.
So he was in that world and he was telling you to get out.
Yeah, he did not want me to be like him, but I idolized him. So, of course, I wanted to be like him. You know, just like, like
at a young age, it's like kids are just sponges and they latch on to, you know, things that they idolize and like and think it's cool. And
yeah, and I think sometimes it's more than that because, you know, we go where we feel love.
True.
You know, and being on the streets when you don't have a lot of family around, you gravitate to where you feel accepted, where you feel valued, because you're just trying to find somewhere you belong.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, that's what a lot of gangs do is, you know, they look for those people, looking for that sense of belonging and that surrogate family. It goes back to like that whole safe base, with kids, man. Those gangs become that replacement safe base. It becomes this surrogate family where they feel belong, accepted.
They're missing that acceptance and love, and they feel like they're getting it from them.
Exactly. And so, I kept being drawn to those environments because, that's all I knew. Those were the people I was around, my cousin, and, even my dad. And it was so funny because I used to tell myself how much, I wasn't going to be like my dad. And, I had a lot of this resentment towards him, and then end up just repeating a lot of the same mistakes, and it's those I found myself in the cycle.
Did your parents ever say anything to you about like, hey, we don't want you to do all this, or they just kind of just let you be?
It's kind of funny. I remember after getting arrested and talking to my parents, the first thing that was said to me was, why didn't you tell us? We could have hid you.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, but once again, I think a lot of it too, though, when I go back and I think about my parents and I think about life is we can only address life or the situations we find ourselves in with the tools that we have. I think that my parents did the best they could with the tools that they had.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know. And so I think that's part of my passion in working with young people and families is to help give them the tools so that they can navigate through life, because you don't know what you don't know. And when you find yourselves in situations in life, you're only going to be able to address them with the tools that you have.
Yeah. So I want to go back before you got incarcerated, like when you were 15, 16. You say you got incarcerated at 17?
So I was arrested around 16. I think I actually went to the facility when I was 17.
What was life like everyday life like before you kind of got in trouble?
No day was the same. It was one of those things bouncing around. I bounced around all over the city, living in Northeast, living on the West Side.
Just staying at any friend's house you can.
Exactly. And, it was a good experience in a way too, because at one time I stayed with, an Asian family, a Hmong family. I was exposed to so many different people and cultures that it helped kind of, it introduced me to a lot of stuff that, normally I don't think I would have been exposed to. And it was really interesting because, my family being from Kansas City, Missouri, a lot of Hispanic cats from Missouri don't get along with Hispanics in Kansas, And so when I was living here on the Kansas side, I found myself hanging out with like Hmong and Vietnamese.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And so obviously that's the origin of where the nickname Buddha came from. But I've been blessed. I went to school, and it was really crazy because at a young age, I went to Catholic schools up until I was in the 6th grade. And I will admit, I was not the best kid. I think
most of us could look back and say, yeah, I probably could have done a little bit better.
Yeah. But once again, it just goes back to the right influences in your life. But I got kicked out of the entire archdiocese of Kansas City. Like no Catholic school would accept me. But
How did you do that?
I had an issue with authority.
I feel you on that one. Yeah.
Especially when someone tries to tell me to do something that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Not to get into like religion and all of that, but
sure.
at a young age, I asked a simple question and it just didn't sit right. And I asked one of my teachers at the Catholic school, I was like, how come someone like Mother Teresa can go to heaven, but someone like Mahatma Gandhi couldn't? Why is it that is it based on I have to say I believe this faith and not by my actions and what I do?
Sure.
And so that it just never resonated with me. It just didn't make sense to me. And so I definitely rebelled. That's
a valid question. Not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I would have been like, yeah, you can make a good point.
yeah. My things like this, and when a lot of people ask me like what my religion is, and I really don't really say I have a religion. I'm very spiritual, but if I was to say a religion, my religion's love. Because if you live in love, then you're honoring everything in life, everything that our Creator created. Our Creator created us, our Creator created the world around us. And if we live in love and love what our Creator created, then we're going to live in balance with the world around us. Mm-hmm. And so, but I wasn't that aware or evolved in my thinking back then. Mm-hmm. That's just where I am today. But back then it just didn't make sense to me. And yeah, so I definitely found myself fighting authority, and in Catholic schools they are very structured, so mm-hmm. you can definitely it wasn't long until I found myself in public schools. And it was funny because when I was in Catholic schools, I was always in like the sped class and the special class and all that, and to me it felt like when I went to public schools I went from being the dumb kid to being the smart kid.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting, but just navigating through the private schools was crazy. I mean, I remember I went to one Catholic school here in KCK, and a kid literally tried to fight me about the Alamo.
About the Alamo?
About the Alamo, right? It was my family and one other family was the only Hispanic family in the whole school. And there was like one black family. Mm-hmm. And so it was just like, it was just
that's kind of wild.
Yeah, it was very wild. It's just interesting. And so that was one of my biggest things is I think growing up in life, though, I always found myself caught in between worlds. Mm-hmm. My mom's white. My dad is Hispanic, and too white to be Hispanic, too Hispanic to be white. And I never had a place. And so I always found myself as an outsider throughout my entire life. And it was so crazy because, when I was born, I didn't have my dad's last name. I had my mom's last name, and you can't get more European white than Knickerbocker.
Wait, what?
Yes.
That was your original last name? That was
my original name. So I was Maximilian Knickerbocker.
I didn't think that was a real last name.
Yeah.
There's someone out there with the last name of Knickerbocker.
Yep. It's actually a very influential name. The Knicks.
Yeah, the Knicks are the New York Knickerbockers. Yeah, but I thought that was like a term for like a shoe shiner or something, or like a shoe or something.
Yeah, I'm not really sure on that.
I didn't think that was a last name. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is a last name.
Why did you change that name? Yeah, that's such a like you talking about like Maximilian Knickerbocker. That sounds like you grew from nothing and now you're this elite, like rich millionaire.
Well, after my youngest brother was born, I think I was about probably somewhere around maybe 8 years old is when I got my dad's last name, mm-hmm. Which is Mendoza.
Was that your choice, or that was just family kind of just?
That was just the family's choice. Mm-hmm. I recall wanting it because I always remember growing up being made fun of, like I wasn't really part of the family, and even my dad even said at times like, "Oh, your real dad's some white guy that lives on Ward Parkway."
Oh, Jesus!
I mean, yeah, because at one point I even got a DNA test and went to him and was like, "Hey, here's a DNA test. Also, look at this," and found out that my dad was like only 3%. Like I only have 3% Spaniard, and like 38% Native American. And so it was like, "Hey, pops, I guess you're not as Spanish as you thought you were."
Yeah. So you said you were like kind of involved in gangs and stuff. Like,
yeah.
Kind of what was that? Like, kind of walk us through that. Like, how was that life?
Well, growing up, for us, it was more of kind of a survival of, we weren't out here just like banging to bang. It was more of, we were out here to make money and survive. Mm-hmm. And that's what got me into drugs, selling drugs and all that kind of stuff and get involved in gang activities. But like, I remember everything being very racially charged, like in our neighborhood, you had all the Hispanics in one part, you had all the blacks in another part, and everybody stayed in their own neighborhood. So it was more of, it was more of just, this was our neighborhood. We kind of regulated our neighborhood, but we were more worried about making money.
Yeah.
So
what led to the arrest? If you don't want to talk about it.
No, we can totally talk about it. I mean, this I share my story with the young people I work with. I think one of my things, I was very naive and was just trying to find acceptance. And so I had some family members and some individuals who basically told me like, hey man, we owe this guy some money. We owe this drug dealer some money. And if we don't pay him off, he's going to come after us and the rest of our families, you know? And in my thought process back then, and I'm not saying, you know, my brain definitely wasn't developed. I'm just like, well, shoot, let's get him before he gets us. And they were like, well, no, you know, he's your brother's supplier. There's, you know, and they just made it like a situation where like the only option was to pay this guy off. And so I helped him do some robberies to try to get the money to pay this dude off. And to come to find out, after everything was said and done, there was no dude.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
So they were just kind of conning you just to help you or help them.
Yeah. Once again, you know, like I said, I was naive, and, you know, a lot of those people who say that, you know, I learned very quickly that not everybody that's family's family. And I've been manipulated quite a bit by, you know, blood related family. And so I don't have a lot of blood family, but I have been able to be lucky to have a family now that I've been able to create by people who have come into my life. I've learned that blood doesn't make you family. It's the people that are by your side when you need them that make family.
So how did you find out that this guy didn't exist?
It wasn't until after we got locked up and I started piecing things together, and I actually got incarcerated with my co-defendant. And, you know, things come out in discoveries. You know, I found out that they did robberies. I just helped them with some robberies here on the Kansas and Missouri side. They went from Kansas City all the way to Tampa Bay, Florida, and Tampa Bay, Florida back.
Jesus.
Yeah. So thank God I, you know,
do all that.
Well, and something always seemed fishy from the get-go. You know, something just wasn't quite right. And so when they were saying they were heading off to Florida, I was like, all right, deuces, I'm done, I'm out. And they all actually got caught before I did, because I never went by my real name. No one ever really knew my real name. The only reason they found out who I was because one of the, you know, my cousin was involved in all this stuff, and once she got arrested, then of course they found out who I was. Yeah. Because the other co-defendants, I don't think they ever really knew my real name.
Yeah. So what was life like locked up? Like, what was that like? Because so you got locked up early.
Yeah.
Like, at a young age.
Yeah. And altogether I did 5 years in the system. I did 3 years in YCAT, which is a maximum facility for juveniles here in the state of Kansas. And then I bounced around in the adult system in Missouri. And then
How long did you get sentenced for?
So in Kansas, I think I had a 5-year sentence. I did 3. And then in Missouri, I had multiple charges, so there was a lot of bouncing back and forth for court hearings and different things like that. So between like sitting in counties, going through processing, all of that, it accumulated up to about 2 years. Yeah. And then I spent some time in CCA federal holding on a federal charge, which was even crazier because after I did my time and got out, I get pulled over one night with
this is after like your 5
this
years.
is after I did my time. I get out, and I hadn't even been out for very long, but I had a cousin of mine who her duffel bag was in my car with her. She did security and her gun and everything, and got charged with a gun possession.
Oh, this is right after you got out?
Yeah.
You didn't even know it was in there?
Nope.
God.
And so the crazy part about it, I was charged with violation of interstate commerce, illegal gun trafficking, and felon in possession of a firearm. And my pre-sentencing investigation came back with a minimum of, what was it, like 27 years. Ooh. They used so a lot of people don't know this, but on a federal charge, they can use your juvenile record to establish career criminality. So that escalated me on the matrix. Then because my other crimes were violent crimes that involved a weapon, I had an ACA, which is an armed criminal action, which escalated me on the matrix even further.
Mm-hmm. So what happened?
So it was so crazy because even when I got out, man, we're jumping around in the story, so it gets confusing.
That's all right.
But so after I got out, it was very hard to get a job and to figure out life as a felon and being on supervision. So I was working in Westport at a Jimmy John's and working as a bouncer in Westport. So
just trying to take any job you can.
Yeah, any job I could. And so, but being a bouncer and working at Jimmy John's, I got to meet all these artists. A lot of musicians and kids going to UMKC in the art school, working in, at Jimmy John's. And so met a group of guys, and we kind of created they created this umbrella of artists. And so we started this music promotions company called Recycled Rockstar Industries. And really the mastermind of my friend Josh Nelson and his friend, and they had a band called Bent Left, politically charged punk rock band. And so I got involved with them and started getting involved in the music scene, and we had a local magazine.
Get involved with them? Like you were playing music? Or?
Yeah, I played a little bit of music.
Did you really?
Yeah. I played the bass guitar, but mostly I was doing like advertising sales for our magazine, PR work, working with different venues. Because of course, with me doing bouncing, I knew all these venue owners, and so we were just. It was kind of like we were all jack of all trades. We all had different things we were all doing to kind of. Keep this project going that just kept growing so fast and so rapidly. And so through the course of doing this, we were able to do things like we started a community garden. We were doing community events, engaging the neighborhood. We had what was called the Recycled Rockstar Field Day, where the whole community came out. We had field day games and food, and then we were working with young people, teaching them how to play music, getting them their instruments. Artists that we work with were teaching the kids how to play music. And so just doing all this stuff, I started building a reputation. And so when I caught this federal case, the community really came to bat for me. I mean, we had that courtroom packed. I mean, they weren't even letting any more people into the courtroom. The judge had said multiple times, like, I'm getting so many letters. And so
that's good.
It was crazy. I ended up taking a plea bargain. And I was expecting to go to federal prison for 5 years. And we fought this case for 2 years in court. And we get to the point where I take the plea bargain. I go to sentencing. I have all these character witnesses, come up and talk about how I've been working with the community. And the prosecutor, Tara Moorhead, which I don't know if you know, she has a lot of... Yeah. So that was my prosecutor. And so things weren't looking good. And at sentencing, she stood up and said, Your Honor, I believe Mr. Mendoza is the victim of the legality of law, and that he was not intentionally trying to commit a crime, and that prison time would be an unjust sentence. And me and my attorney are looking at each other like, what? This is not the person we've been dealing with for the past 2 years. And so the judge ended up giving me 10 years supervision on federal probation and parole. And I ended up only doing like 4.
So you were cussing your cousin out, like, don't leave shit in my car again. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a whole crazy ordeal. But what was so wild about all of that too, was I am on federal supervision. And I'm still doing the work, engaging my community, and I start doing public speaking, and I get appointed. So somebody reaches out to me one day who was my mentor from when I was incarcerated. I was in a mentoring program called Kairos Torch. And my mentor, Linda, calls me up and just checking on me, asking me how I'm doing. She's like, I've been hearing really great things. I was at my doctor, and my doctor was telling me that his wife works for the state, and they're looking for people who've been in the system to help with the justice system. So I was like, yeah, sure, send them my information. And so here I'm thinking they just want me to come speak to a group of kids. And I get all these crazy documents sent to me, tax clearance, affiliation document. I mean, all these forms for background checks and stuff. And I call the Department of Correction or the governor's office. I'm like, hey, what is all this? And they're like, oh, well, your name was submitted for appointment to an appointed position. And I was like, huh? And they were like, yeah, you've been recommended to serve on the state advisory board for juvenile justice and delinquency prevention. And so here I was like, well, you guys know I'm a felon,
you know
right?
Who I am,
you
right?
know I'm on
This is not a trick.
supervision. And they're like, oh, yeah, we know. That's why you are being pushed to be into this role. And so in 2012, I became a governor-appointed official in the state of Kansas.
Wow, well, that's quite the big turnaround.
It really was, because my probation officer with the feds was like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
We've never had this happen. She's calling her supervisor to be like, can he do this?
Yeah, can he leave his house to do this? Like, the governor is saying he needs to be here.
So yeah, so they were shocked, and you know, just I kept getting more involved in community stuff, and eventually it got to the point where like my probation officer was just like, you are a waste of our time. You're actually out here contributing to your community. There's no reason for you to be on supervision. Yeah. So I ended up getting released from my supervision, like I said, after only being on for like 4 years.
Yeah. It's like quite the success story, man.
Man, it's wild because it just kept going on from there, you know. So I started just advocating. That was the biggest thing, is I was advocating for juvenile rights, because going through the system, I saw how broken the system was. You know, we talk about rehabilitation. You know, that's the purpose of incarceration, is to rehabilitate. But how do you rehabilitate if an individual has never been habilitated in the first place? Yeah. And that was my biggest thing. I was never given the skills or the tools to be able to navigate life or just to be a person, you know. Well, it was so crazy because when I got released, I didn't know how to open a bank account or how to fill out an application or rent an apartment or get utilities. And I don't know how I did it. I mean, I just had to do it. I had to figure it out. And to me, it was so wild, because it's like, now I see why so many people, it's just so much easier just to go back to prison. Yeah. It's so much easier just living the life that you did. Exactly. Because it's like there's so many new changes, there's so many things you got to do to be, you know, on the right path. And it's just like, man, I can just easily just go back to what I was doing and, you know, sell this and that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, you know, it was hard to make a living. I mean, yeah, especially being a felon. Yeah, it's not, you can't just walk to a job and say, I would like to work here. Yeah, because nobody wanted to hire me. Yeah. I mean, I started off at a Jimmy John's sweeping floors and doing dishes and worked my way up to management. Mm-hmm. And it's just crazy because, you know, once again, like I said, everything that happens in life is providing you with some sort of skill. We may not realize it in that moment. And so managing a restaurant gave me skills, and being able to help manage a business and run a business and manage people. And so all of these experiences in my life gave me skills that I've been able to transfer over into other aspects of my life. And, you know, that's what I try to teach these young people, is that everything happens for a reason. And the biggest thing is we can't see it at the time, but at some point in life, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I realize this is why this happened now. Yeah. So what was like the aha moment for you where you were just like, I need to change my life around? My moment came when I was incarcerated. I was cutting it up my first couple years locked up. I was fighting, I was banging, and I got put in a disciplinary unit. And I was on 23-1, which means I was locked down 23 hours a day, allowed 1 hour of rec or whatever time. And I did that whole 6 months. I had 3 months, saw a guy I had an issue with when I was getting transferred out. I didn't even get finished with the transfer over to the other side of the unit. Saw a guy that was messing with, a friend of mine, and walked over and hit him in one punch and walked back to my cell, because I knew, you know, that was going to be another 3 months. And so after that happened, here I'd already done like 4 months, and My cousin, my older cousin that I idolized, was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting while I was in solitary. So here I am with no one to talk to, just me and myself, and having to think about the last thing I said to the one person who always thought I could be more or do more. And I gave up. I felt like there was no point in going on anymore. And I wanted to end it. And, you know, thankfully that didn't happen. But I had a chaplain and a teacher from that facility, Chaplain Craig, and this teacher, Mr. Scotto, came and talked to me. And they asked me a question that changed my life forever. And they said, obviously you loved this person. Why can't you be the kind of person that he thought you could be? And I told him I didn't know how. And they told me that they were willing to help me, but that they could only help me as much as I was willing to help myself.
Yeah, you got to invest time in yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
you got to want to do it.
Yeah. You know, and so I did, and I started working towards getting my high school diploma. And by the time I left that facility, I not only had a diploma, I had 2 vocational certifications, and I walked out of that facility with 24 college credit hours.
It's good for you.
Yep. Yeah, it sucked, though, because when I got out, it was hard trying to survive, trying to make a living, and I went to school for 3 years after getting out. I mean, literally my routine was open up the restaurant, go to school, go work the bar, close the bar, go sleep in my car until it was time to open the restaurant, and just wash, rinse, repeat. And went to school for 3 years before finding out that I couldn't be a licensed social worker.
You could?
Couldn't.
Oh, you couldn't.
My 3rd year in school, an academic counselor goes, so what are you going to do if you can't be licensed? I was like, well, what do you mean? Well, you're a felon. You can't be a licensed social worker. Well, shouldn't you have all told me this day
after
one?
After I spent all this money and time. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just kind of gave up on my dream and once again dropped out of school and found myself just really hitting the streets, you know, with the music scene. And that was never my true passion. My passion was always to work with young people. And that passion really came from when I was incarcerated, because like I said, I was in that mentoring program, and I was the first long-term inmate they ever allowed into that program. Like, the chaplain had to fight the superintendent tooth and nail to get me into the program. And so it was, I was a huge success. The program was very beneficial to me. And so after I was done, I was like, well, now what? And so I became the chaplain's assistant. And then, excuse me. And then they started letting other long-termers. And so now we had about, I think there was like 4 of us who were long-term inmates who gone through this program, because most of the guys who went through the program were like within 6 months of getting released.
Yeah.
And so I got together with the guys and was like, hey, how would you guys feel if we started our own group? And they were in, and so we went to the chaplain and talked about it, and I created the Torchbearers program. And the Torchbearers were young men who went through the program, who graduated, and then became kind of like peer mentors to the other guys in the facility. And when I knew, my aha moment was I was giving my testimony to a group of young men one day, and I'll remember this guy till the day I die. His name was Jose. And Jose came up to me afterwards and he goes, man, I just heard my entire life story come out of your mouth. And I see how people look at you and respect you in here, and it makes me think I can do it too. And after that, I was just like, this is why I'm here.
Yeah,
this is why
I do it.
This is what brought everything led me up to this moment for me to find out what my path was in life. And my path in life was to be the example of the change I wanted to see in the world.
Yeah, it seems like there was a lot of hurdles in your life, but you seem to figure out a way to overcome it, which is a testimony to you, because a lot of people give up. And when they face, 1 hurdle's okay, 2 hurdles is fine, 3 or 4, you're just like, okay, I'm done. A lot of people just say, I'm done. But it seems like you just keep fighting, which is, I mean, that's awesome, man.
Man, yeah. I did have moments in my life where I wanted to give up.
Of course.
But luckily...
that's normal.
Well, no, so I think it when you have the right support system.
Yeah.
I never had the right support system until I was incarcerated, and people were placed in my life when I needed them. The right people came in. And so one of the biggest things is just being aware enough to recognize when those people step into your life.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I share with young people, I tell them, you have to look at yourself like a business. With any good business, you need good investors. And are the people you associate investing in you, are they helping to elevate you to a higher point than where you are, or are they holding you back?
Yeah.
And so luckily, I had that mindset without realizing that that's what my mindset was. And so I was able to take advantage of all the opportunities. And it's crazy because when you grow up in a situation where you don't have a lot of opportunity, I think you can kind of it helped me to be hyper aware of when opportunity was available.
So where did Heartland 180 come from?
So Heartland 180 came from the work I was doing as an advocate in the juvenile justice field. So like I said, in 2012, I was appointed as a governor appointee, and I started advocating for juvenile rights. In my first year, I was sent to Washington, D.C., and I met Simone Sanders. I don't know if you've ever heard of Simone Sanders. You'll see her on TV a lot. She's a news anchor. She did a lot of she was Bernie Sanders' press secretary. But at the time, she was the chairman of the Federal Youth Committee. And I got connected with her, and she got me trained in youth engagement training and got me involved at the Federal Youth Committee. And I had learned at the time, like, Kansas was one of 5 states that did not have a state youth committee.
Yeah.
And so upon returning from Washington, D.C., learning about all this stuff on the federal level and what was going on nationally, thanks to the National Coalition of Juvenile Justice, I came back and lobbied for Kansas to establish a state youth committee. And it happened. And I was the chairman of that committee for like years. I want to say almost 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And so in doing this work and advocating for juvenile justice reform, I developed a really good relationship with the director of community-based services from the Department of Corrections. His name was Randy Bowman. And Randy called me one day and goes, "Max, I just met with a gentleman who wants to start this program that is exactly what you've been talking about wanting to do, and I really want to introduce the two of you." And so I met with him. His name was Jonas Hayes, and he worked with a national organization called the 180 Degrees Program. And so they write a curriculum based on social emotional learning, which social emotional learning is all those soft skills that we learn how to engage, like interpersonal relationship skills, conflict resolution. One of the biggest ones for boys, I think, with young men is the emotional intelligence, the ability to articulate your emotions and understand how emotions correlate with behavior.
That's huge.
So I met with him. I fell in love with the curriculum, and I quit my job and took a leap of faith and started Heartland 180 with this guy. And it was funny because it wasn't until a couple years ago I reconnected with Jonas, because Jonas eventually moved back to California where he was from.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, I pretty much had to go from teaching the program to running the program. And I really felt like I was not prepared for that. And so I became the executive director, and
like right away.
Yeah. Like, within the first maybe, 4 or 5 years of the creation of this organization. And so just like I said, maybe a year ago or two, I was in California and reconnected with Jonas, and Jonas had shared a story. He goes, when I talked to Randy Bowman, Randy said that he would not support this unless I was involved.
Oh, really?
He basically told him, like, there was no way this is going to happen unless you get Max Mendoza on board. And so I was just shocked when I found that out.
That's
cool. But once again, I think that showed it showed how my commitment to the work allowed me to get people that supported me. You know, they saw my passion, they saw my determination to make a difference and to be the voice for those who didn't have a voice within our juvenile justice system. Yeah. And so thankfully I gained some support from people who were able to, you know, people empowered to help me, you know, do the work and to help me get into those positions. So here I am and working with Heartland 180. And
so tell the people what Heartland 180 is.
So Heartland 180, we are a youth service organization that works with middle school, high school aged youth, teaching them social emotional learning. And we've actually gone a little bit farther than that to provide, we're starting a new program called our One Circle. Which are groups for young people that are healing circles. It's based on trauma-informed approaches on working with kiddos who have experienced trauma to give them those soft skills that they need.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest things with young people, you know, I always see three major things that young people are looking for. They're looking for a place where they feel heard, a place where they feel accepted, and a place where they feel safe. You know, they feel, you know, it's really providing them that space where they feel like they belong and that they matter and that their voice is valued. And so we try to create that space for young people. 'Cause really 90% of this work is relationships, developing relationships with people. I mean, you can go in, you could have the best curriculum, you could have the best tools, but when you go into that room and if you don't have a relationship with the person,
it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything. You're shouting over a wall, hoping something will stick. But when you build a relationship with someone,
it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like kids are looking for an idol.
Yeah.
They're looking for family.
Yeah.
Like they're looking for someone to connect to. If they can't, like you're just there, just like you said, just talking to a wall.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I don't get this person. Like I don't connect with this person. So I always love when people, like, I mean, and that connects to most of us today too. It's like people that you feel like that, like you can connect with and like have similar stories to them, or they've been through the same kind of stuff you've been through, you connect with more. Like if a billionaire comes in there and tries to talk to these kids about, you know, what to do in life and the hard times, they're like, I've never seen $1,000 or $100,000 in my life. Like, why am I going to connect with you?
Right.
So,
well, you know, and it's interesting because, you know, I think back to when I was incarcerated and I had a corrections officer tell me how important it was that I get an education and go to college. And I asked him, well, how'd you go to college? And he goes, well, both of my parents made sacrifices. You know, they worked 2 jobs and they helped me make it through college. And immediately I was like, well, that's never going to happen for me. And so it didn't even seem real. It was a fantasy. And that was one of my biggest things going through the system is I had all these individuals telling me how to live my life, but no one that lived my life.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't relate to what you were saying because it seemed like a fantasy to me.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that helps our agency be so successful is that the staff that we have are relatable. You know, we're not another suit. Yeah. We're not another badge, you know, and that's the thing. These kids that are in the system, they see all these professionals and I know myself, I felt like I was just another file, another number. But when you can help, when you allow a person to be a person and they feel like a person, then they open up. Yeah. You know, and that's one of our biggest things is that we're real people. We've gone through the same incidences as the youth that we work with. I mean, I have staff that come from that were in the foster care themselves. I have staff who, you know, have touched the justice system themselves. One of our great facilitators. I have lots of great facilitators. Not to say that anybody is But you had the chance to meet Tyrone Weaver.
Oh yeah,
and
he was
hearing
on the podcast.
Yeah, so hearing Tyrone's story, about his hurdles growing up, how he did in North Carolina, and going through football and all of that, and when those kids see that Super Bowl ring on his finger, I mean, they're just like, and it makes
I can be like him.
Exactly. It makes it more tangible. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're just trying to do.
So how long you guys been around for?
So we officially started in 2014. Mm-hmm. And when we first started, we were just an after-school program. We met at Northwest Middle School after school, had kids from all over Wyandotte, our KCK public schools, and they would just come to that middle school, and we'd do programming, 3 times a week, and it just kept growing. So we went from being at one school to then being in different schools. And now in Kansas City, I have 6 different program sites. 2 of them are in high schools. We work with the detention center. So we're inside the detention center working with the youth. We aren't doing programming right now because we haven't had any kids in there, but we provide programming for the day reporting center for the juvenile justice center. And then I have 3 community partners that we work with. Full Throttle Fitness. They do boxing, sports training, and conditioning, and along with our curriculum. And then we work with Martin Cervantes and Low Riding to Success. And then we have the One Circle site that we're hoping to eventually partner and incorporate some art with it.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, and that's just with the youth. We have a whole nother side where we're working with parents. We have our parent and family support services.
Yeah, I think that's what's cool because a lot of people miss that point because that's a very important piece to it because you can try to fix the kids all you want, but if they're going back to a bad home, you're not doing anything.
You hit the nail on the head.
It's like you're taking a step forward, but then when they go back home, they're taking 3 steps back. So
it's putting a bandage on a wound that you don't know is going to heal.
Yep.
And so
I think a lot of programs miss out on that, and I'm glad that you guys are hitting on that.
Well, yeah, it's and it also goes back to that thing that a lot of these are cycles. Like I said earlier, we can only do what we can do, and if these parents don't have the right tools to be able to be a parent, it's just going to be a continuing cycle. And so that's one of the things, like we have a program that's specifically for parents of children with destructive behavior, focusing on parenting tools. But one of the great things about this is a lot of these parents don't have that support system. They don't have that auntie, that grandmother, grandparent to call when they need help. And so with our programs, what we do is not only do we provide them the skills, but then the curriculum teaches them to become a support group, gives them the tools to be able to develop that natural support system between their classmates. And they can keep meeting indefinitely. And then we just help them logistically to keep the support group going.
Good, man.
Yeah.
So what's next? You got a lot on your plate.
Well, we just expanded. So we just opened up a program site in Wichita, Kansas. So for me, my next goal is to get us into Leavenworth and Johnson County. But my goal is for Heartland 180 to be serving the entire Heartland. And so that would be my goal within the next 5 years to see a 180 program in Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, and just go from there.
So did you ever did you ever see yourself like looking back like 10, 15 years ago? Think you ever be at this point right now?
Never in a million years. Never. And it's one of those things because when you ask people in a leadership role, I think a true leader never says they wanted to be a leader. And I never wanted to be in a leadership role. I mean, till this day, I don't consider myself your typical CEO or executive director. I'm just really passionate about this work. And I think, because of that, people have trusted me to be in this leadership role. But if I had my choice, I would love to have someone run the organization for me and be back in a classroom.
I can tell. I know you like the teaching part of it.
Oh yeah,
yeah, but you gotta run it too.
That is
That's
true.
the hard part.
That is true.
Yeah. So, if you could like have like a magic wand, right, and just try to fix like one thing about the justice system. Not, there's so many things,
right.
but like, if you could just like say, you know what, this is one thing I wish I could just change that would help so much out. Like if you were in power, anything, like what would you do?
I think right now, one of the biggest things with our justice system here in the state of Kansas is for us to do more prevention work. Mm-hmm. Our system is so reactive instead of being proactive. Mm-hmm. And if we could focus on providing the tools and the skills that young people need before they end up in front of a judge.
Yeah.
That to me would be pivotal in how our justice system would run.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, and even right now, I have so many people reach out needing services, and we can't help them because the dollars that we get from the state are allocated to people in the system. Mm-hmm. Now, thankfully, there was some legislation that recently passed. It was House Bill 2023 that expanded the definition of system involvement to include our foster care system, to include our DCF families, and then kids experiencing a mental health crisis. So that has given us some wiggle room. But still, when you have a person who's needing services now and they're sitting on a waiting list for 6 months to get into a mental health professional just to be able to get help, it's a disservice, you know? And once again, it goes back to how the system is built to be reactive instead of proactive.
Mm-hmm. I always thought that was a huge problem. Same, what exactly you're saying. Everybody's reactive.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to think about, how do I prevent this problem? They want to stop the problem when it's happening. Like, well, maybe if you put a little bit more money and resources in how to solve or how to fix the problem before we get to the big problem.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and there was some work done with that. Senate Bill 367 that was passed. I worked with the Senator Greg Smith on that bill and with the Pew Roundtable. And in essence, that was the goal, was to stop locking kids up and to put money back into communities for community-based programs. Mm-hmm. But I think there wasn't enough foresight to think about, well, what's going to happen with the prevention side of it.
Yeah. Okay. So last question.
All right.
What message do you want to portray to the kids out there that they're going through it, struggling, kind of same situation as you do, like same message you kind of tell to the kids, but maybe someone that's listening to this, like what message do you kind of always want to get out to kids like that are in that kind of situation?
I think my message is really for anybody, anyone, is that, just because we make mistakes doesn't mean we are mistakes, and that we all have the potential to do great things in this world if we're willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
People aren't mistakes.
Yeah.
And helping everybody realize their potential and to realize the power that they have. Because that's the biggest thing is when you don't know your self-value, how far are you really going to go? Mm-hmm.
I like that. That's a good one. I'm going to use that. I'm going to go back to this podcast and write it down. I'm like, what did Max say again?
It's funny. That's my thing. My students were always like, Mr. Max has a quote for everything.
Mm-hmm. You do. You get good ones, man. I think it's why that Maximilian Knickerbocker perfect poet name.
Well, it's interesting. You know what the name Maximilian means, right? The name Maximilian means greatness.
There you go.
And I was named after both my grandfathers. My mom's father was Maximilian. My dad's father was Raymond or Ramon. And so my name, Maximilian Raymond Mendoza. And I really do believe I'm living up to my namesakes.
Yeah, no, good, man. I'm glad that you're doing all this, and I hope the best for you. And I'm glad that you're the one leading the charge, because it's I can see the passion behind your eyes, and it's awesome.
Well, one of the things too, I had a mentor always teach me is that in any position that you're in, you should always be looking for your replacement.
Ooh, yeah. Look at you, all these quotes. Yeah.
I'm telling you. And that goes back to the whole torchbearer thing is I'm not going to be here forever. And so I'm very involved in the Native American community, and there's this concept of the law of seven, is that the path that you walk or the life that you live is going to affect 7 generations after you. And so I am very mindful of that philosophy. That's
good, man. So tell people how they can find you. Like social or
so we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we have all the social media, so either H180 program or Heartland 180, and then you can always go to our website at heartland180.org.
Max, man, it's been a pleasure having you on. I know we've been talking about this forever, so I'm glad I got you. And then it sucks that you came back from Mexico and came back to this cold weather, but we're glad to have you back home.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm glad to be back. 2 weeks was a little long. I got homesick.
yeah, I ain't kidding. I feel you on that one, man. Well, we're gonna end this, man. I appreciate you coming on, man. And now you get to enjoy your cigar that you lit and barely got to it.
Right.
No worries, man.
Conversation was great.
Yeah, exactly, man. Appreciate it, and thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and follow us on all social media platforms at Strawberry Hill Podcast, and we are out.
Goodbye, everybody.